Arachnia, a tale of tragedy and repercussions. On the edge of the village of Württemberg lived Arachnia, the goddess of arachnids. She was a very beautiful woman, but was born with pincers and 8 eyes, the color of the night. Her children were large, the size of dogs, with 8 legs and eyes. The village people, originally charmed by Arachnia, grew upset with her. Her children instilled fear in the young, the women, and even the strongest of men. Many tortured or killed her children, believing them to also be the children of Tolkashke, the god of death and night. Every night, Arachnia cried over the loss of her children. They were doing no harm to the village people, but the people were still upset. One night, the village people rallied together to chase Arachnia out of the village and into the Black Forest. Some even wished to kill her. But she was fast, faster than all of them. She ran and ran until she reached a cave deep in the forest where she wept. The echoes of her cries rang through the forest and into every village around where her children had heard her cries and left to her aid. Once reunited with their mother, her children spun her a blanket from silk to keep her warm and comforted. Others made a curtain for the cave to keep the wind and cold out. Arachnia was thankful for her children's kindness, yet did not know how to repay them.
We need
no payment.
Her children said.
Just your love.
Back in the village of Württemberg, the townsfolk were very pleased. The children of Arachnia were gone, and they didn't think they would have to deal with them again. There was a gentle young man, though, Nickel, who enjoyed the children of Arachnia. He would give them meat and bread, and in turn they were kind to him. He learned of their troubles and how the other people of the village treated them. It enraged him, but the children told him not to speak out about it, for he would be in great trouble. So, when all of them left, he felt worried and alone. He prayed every night to the gods for their and Arachnia's safety. The next couple of days were peaceful for the village. The young weren't crying, the women could leave their homes, and the men weren't looking around for pests to kill. But on the 6th day of this peace, a woman spotted one of the children of Arachnia skittering about her house. She screamed and screamed, alerting the village people of the unwelcome presence. Nickel heard the screams and knew he had to protect the child of Arachnia before it was murdered. He ran to the woman and shielded the child from the others.
It's not doing anything wrong.
It's creepy.
Ugh, it's ugly. The village people shouted, not listening to the young man.
He should kill the beast.
One of the men yelled, everyone cheering in agreement. Nickel was shocked. He couldn't kill anyone, or anything for a matter of fact. But the village people didn't listen and instead gave him an ultimatum.
Follow that pest and kill its owner, or else he will be executed.
That night, Nickel prayed and prayed to the gods for help, but didn't feel anything. That was until he was asleep, where he dreamed his hands were covered in blood, a bloody sword and shield next to him. He quickly awoke, not daring fall back asleep. In the morning, he found a bag packed, his sword and shield next to it. His stomach churned like ants were dancing around his insides. He got his horse from the stables as slowly as he could, trying to draw out as much time as possible. But he couldn't hold off forever, and before he knew it, he was already off to the forest. Nickel was scared at first. He had never been out of the village alone, but soon everything became peaceful. The forest, while a little dim, was gorgeous. The smell of fresh plants and just fallen rain flooded his senses with relief, allowing him to relax. Soon, though, Nickel realized he had no idea where he was going. He had a map packed, but wherever Arachnia was staying was not marked anywhere. He just kept moving forward, hoping he'd run into any sort of sign where she was staying. After hours of searching and moving, night started to fall. Nickel knew he'd have to stop, or else he'd get even more lost. Once he found a spot, he started a fire and set up camp for his horse and himself, tying his horse to a tree. Once night fell, everything was pitch black besides what the fire touched. It took a while, but eventually Nickel closed his eyes and fell fast asleep. In his dreams, he saw the same vision as the night before, but there was a woman's body in his view. He couldn't make out any of her features, but he saw the same crimson blood on his hands pooling around her. Nickel jolted awake, looking around the forest. It was lit from the sun rising, creating a beautiful mirage of reds and oranges peering between each of the trees. Instead of being cold, Nickel realized he now had a warm, silky blanket he hadn't previously had. He must be close. Another day of searching went by, and Nickel found nothing. He had thought he was so close, but as he watched the woods grow darker and darker, he knew he had to stop. another day lost. It was a long night for Nickel. He didn't want to sleep in fear of seeing what more the dream would contain. He didn't want to see what he would do to poor Arachnia. His thoughts were interrupted by a scuttling noise. He tried to look around, but just like last night, everything was pitch black besides the fire.
It's him! It's him! It's him!
It's him.
Something said from the darkness.
Follow.
He recognized the voice. He got up and quickly followed them. He knew they'd lead him to his destination. After almost running into many trees, he realized he didn't actually know where he was. It was pitch black, and all he could do was follow the voices. He was terrified. After a little longer, he made it to a cave with silk curtains. There was a light peeking through it. He walked in and saw the back of a woman with long black hair. She was tall and was wearing a long black dress. She was breathtaking. Is this really who he had to kill? As he stepped forward, he stepped on something, breaking it, causing a loud noise to thunder through the cave. The woman quickly turned around to stare at Nickel, her eyes wide, her 8 eyes wide. This must be Arachnia, Nickel thought to himself.
Why have you come here? I've left your village, so why? Why have you come chasing after me?
She said softly. Nickel was silent. He didn't want to kill this woman and leave her children alone in this world.
I have come here to slay you.
He replied, trying to keep his voice steady. She stared at him, her expression becoming more somber. It was quiet for a moment, as she thought of what to say.
But you don't want to, do you?
Nickel didn't know how to respond.
The people of your village sent you off, didn't they?
He just nodded.
I'm sorry my children have scared the young in your village, the women cleaning their houses and the men working in the streets and in the foliage. But I didn't know it would cost my children their lives just to be seen by your kind for the way they look. Maybe if my children had a pink tongue, plush fur, a wagging tail, and 4 legs instead of 8. If they had only 2 eyes, and they were glittering stars and not massive black holes. If they were the same but looked different, maybe your kind wouldn't hate me or my children.
I think you and your children are wonderful. Your children are kind and are the perfect company to have over. I don't know why everyone hates them just by their black eyes that reflect the light in a way that shines like the stars. By their many legs that can lend many helping hands to those in need. By their mouths that do nothing but reduce the pests in the village. You and your children should never have been run out like this.
She looked at Nickel right in his eyes and gave him a small, somber smile.
That's all I've ever wanted to hear. Take my head back to the people of your village to prove you've killed me.
I can't do that.
You must, and you will. Just leave me with my children a little longer before you do. I must say my goodbyes.
Nickel was shocked. She didn't deserve to die, but he couldn't argue with the goddess. He backed out of the cave and watched her silhouette through the curtains. She crouched down and talked to her children about what he could not hear. But after a little, he saw her children shrink down to the size of a pebble. Soon, a flood of tiny 8-legged creatures quickly exited the cave.
Go in, go in!
And with that, he walked in and cut her head straight off, her body thumping to the floor. He felt empty during his journey home. The village people were so happy once he returned with her head. So happy, in fact, that they threw a festival that night in celebration of her death as they praised Nickel. But he wasn't happy.
Kill them, kill them!
He heard the voices of Arachnia's children chant, though he could not see them. He grabbed his sword and left to join the rest of the village people, ready to make a night no one could forget. The once happy village was now a bloodbath. Everyone's happy cheers turned into screams as they were all slaughtered. No one was spared. As Nickel stared at the slaughter in front of him, he noticed a woman. It was the same woman from his dreams. How did he not see it before? He felt sick and disgusted with himself. The once soft-spoken boy was now covered in the blood of the people he grew up with. He couldn't live with himself. He took off running to the forest, running until he found a cliff. He didn't stop, though. He kept running until his feet met air, and then there was nothing to keep him up.